Bloodied Sverdlovsk. The year is 91 and Sverdlovsk, a gritty Soviet industrial hub, has become a battlefield soaked in blood and betrayal. Andrei Ovchinnikov and Alexei Trifonov, once inseparable partners in crime, now stand as bitter enemies, their gangs tearing the city apart in a ruthless war for control. It began with a single stray bullet on Bardina Street, a shot meant for Ovchinnikov that instead claimed the life of Svetlana Efremova, a 54-year-old seamstress who never saw it coming. That moment lit the fuse on a powder keg of violence, plunging Sverdlovsk into a nightmare where no one was safe. Not the elderly, not the innocent, not even the gangsters themselves. What started as a feud over territory spiraled into a spree of murders, robberies, and terror that would stretch from the Ural Mountains to the shores of Vladivostok. Ovchinnikov, a 25-year-old with a boxer's build and political connections, and Trifonov, a former boxing champion turned ruthless gangster, were pioneers of a new criminal Russia. Their gangs, armed with Kalashnikovs, Makarovs, and grenades, ruled through fear, extorting traders, robbing co-ops, and leaving bodies in their wake. In Vladivostok, businessman Maxim Dasov was strangled and dumped in a river, his legs tied to a weight, a message from Trifonov's crew. In Sverdlovsk, henchmen Zapivalov and Kurpatov met the same fate, tortured and drowned, their deaths a mirror of vengeance between the rival factions. Elderly residents were beaten and robbed, their homes invaded by bandits wearing stolen militia uniforms, a cruel mockery of the law that could no longer protect them. In the chaos of the 1990s, where the Soviet Union's collapse left the militia with empty holsters, Ovchinnikov and Trifonov thrived, their hatred for each other fueling a cycle of violence that turned streets into killing grounds. But every empire built on blood eventually faces its reckoning. The militia, backed by the KGB, began a desperate hunt, piecing together a web of murders, robberies, and betrayals that spanned thousands of kilometers. From the streets of Sverdlovsk to the rivers of Vladivostok, the evidence mounted: bullet casings, stolen uniforms, and the whispers of informants who feared for their lives. 5 chapters unravel this harrowing saga: the first shots of a gang war, the escalating body count, the militia's relentless pursuit, the dramatic arrests, and a trial that would test a city's resilience. Through it all, a failed escape attempt with hostages revealed the depths of their desperation as the gangsters' world crumbled around them. This is a story of the 1990s dark heart, where power belonged to those with the fastest trigger fingers. Can justice heal a city scarred by such relentless crime? Or will Sverdlovsk's streets forever bear the stains of Ovchinnikov and Trifonov's reign? Step into the shadows of a broken era. The bloodbath awaits. Chapter 1. The Shot That Broke the Silence. Hook, on a quiet evening in 1991, a single bullet meant for a gangster tore through an innocent woman's life, shattering the fragile peace of Sverdlovsk. That shot wasn't just a murder. It was the opening salvo in a gang war that would drown the city in blood. But who pulled the trigger, and why? The air bites with a late summer chill on Bardina Street, a narrow vein in the industrial heart of Sverdlovsk, as the sun dips below the horizon on a fateful evening in 1991. Svetlana Efremova, a 54-year-old seamstress, steps out of her apartment building at house number 12, her coat buttoned tightly against the cooling air. Her breath clouds faintly as she walks toward the bus stop, a routine etched into her life over decades. Tonight, she needs bread for tomorrow's breakfast. The street is quiet, save for the hum of a distant tram and the murmur of neighbors behind closed windows. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, Sverdlovsk is a city on the edge, its Soviet foundations crumbling, its streets pulsing with a new, dangerous energy. Efremova doesn't hear the roar of engines until it's too late. 2 cars, a beat-up Zhiguli and a nondescript Volga, screech around the corner, tires screaming against the asphalt. Gunfire erupts, a deafening staccato of 17 bullets from a Makarov pistol and a Kalashnikov light machine gun. The muzzle flashes lighting up the dusk. Efremova freezes, her heart pounding, but a stray bullet finds her, piercing her chest. She collapses, blood pooling beneath her eyes wide with shock as the cars vanish into the night, leaving behind a city about to ignite, a city unraveling. Sverdlovsk in 1991 is a city caught in the throes of transformation and collapse. The Soviet Union is disintegrating, its once-iron grip on order replaced by chaos. Factories that once churned out steel and machinery stand silent, their workers lining up for bread instead of wages. The militia, a symbol of Soviet authority, is a hollow shell, underfunded, understaffed, their holsters often empty, a cruel joke in a city where crime is surging. By 1994, Russia will record 32,000 murders. But in 1991, the wave is just beginning to crest. In this vacuum, new predators emerge, men who see opportunity in the rubble of a fallen empire. Andrei Ovchinnikov and Alexei Trifonov are among them. Two former friends turned bitter rivals, their gangs carving up Sverdlovsk like a carcass. They're not just criminals, they're pioneers of a new criminal Russia, where power is measured in guns, fear, and blood. Ovchinnikov, 25, is a hulking figure with a boxer's build and a pedigree that makes him untouchable. His father, a deputy chairman in the city government, ensures doors open and eyes turn away. Trifonov, a former boxing champion turned gangster, is his mirror image in ambition, but not in method. Where Ovchinnikov uses connections, Trifonov wields charisma, his fists as persuasive as his words. Together they once ruled the streets, shaking down market traders and fledgling co-ops in the late 1980s. Their partnership, a blend of brains and brawn. But ambition is a cruel master. By 91, they've split the city. Ovchinnikov controls the northern districts. Trifonov, the south, their territory is marked by invisible lines that bleed when crossed. Their feud has simmered for years, a cold war of threats and posturing, but tonight it explodes into something far deadlier. The question isn't who fired the shot that killed Efremova. It's who ordered it and what they hope to gain. An innocent caught in the crossfire. Passers-by find Efremova an hour later, her body cold on the pavement, her blood a dark stain under the flickering street lamp. She's an unlikely casualty in a war she never knew existed, a seamstress with no enemies, her life a quiet rhythm of needle and thread, her only crime being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The militia arrives, their faces etched with a mix of exhaustion and dread, their resources stretched thin in a city spiraling out of control. 17 bullet casings litter the street, embedded in the walls of houses 12 and 14, their trajectories a chaotic map of violence. Witnesses, drawn to their windows by the gunfire, fragmented accounts. 2 cars, a hail of bullets, fleeting glimpses of men with guns. They shot at the second car, a woman from House 14 whispers, her hands trembling as she clutches a curtain. It was over in seconds. The militia canvasses the street, knocking on doors, their questions urgent, but their tools woefully outdated. There's no ballistics lab, no centralized database, just notebooks, pencils, and the fading hope of catching a break. Residents of Bardina Street, ordinary Soviet citizens, are caught in a new reality where gang wars spill into their lives. Efremova, they learn, was heading to the store, her death a cruel accident in a city where accidents are becoming all too common. But the target wasn't random. Days later, the driver of the second car, a man named Vasily, comes forward, his voice low, his eyes darting like a hunted animal's. He was driving Andrei Ovchinnikov that night, the leader of the northern gang. The bullets were meant for him, a message written in leaden fire. the rival kings of Sverdlovsk. Ovchinnikov's name sends a jolt through the militia station, a ripple of recognition that carries both fear and frustration. At 25, he's a rising star in Sverdlovsk's underworld. His lineage, son of a deputy chairman, giving him a shield few can pierce. His gang is a well-oiled machine, extorting traders, robbing co-ops, and enforcing loyalty with brutal efficiency. But his rival Trifonov is just as formidable. A former boxing champion, Trifonov has built his empire on charisma and Benanzduds, his fists as much a weapon as the Kalashnikovs his crew wields. The two men, once partners, now hunt each other with a ferocity that knows no bounds. Their gangs armed with an arsenal that makes the militia's empty holsters a cruel irony. Makarovs, Kalashnikov, light machine guns, even grenades. Relics of a military past turned tools of a criminal present. The militia knows who fired the shots, or at least who ordered them. Only Trifonov would dare, Detective Ivanov mutters, his voice heavy with the weight of years spent chasing shadows. Trifonov's name is a whisper in Sverdlovsk's underworld, a man whose charm masks a ruthless core. But there's a hitch. Trifonov has an alibi. That night, he was at a bathhouse with friends, his laughter echoing through the steam while Efremova bled out on the street. The alibi is too perfect, the kind that reeks of careful planning. Was this a direct order or a rogue move by Trifonov's crew, a preemptive strike in a war that's been brewing for years? The militia can't answer. Not yet. But they know one thing. Efremova's death is just the beginning, a spark that will set Sverdlovsk ablaze. A war without rules. In the days following the shooting, whispers spread through Sverdlovsk's markets and back alleys, a city holding its breath as the gangs prepare for retaliation. Ovchinnikov, the militia hears, is furious, his rage a storm brewing in the north. He survived the ambush, but his pride didn't. And in the world of 1990s gangsters, pride is worth more than gold. Trifonov, meanwhile, is on the move, his crew fleeing to Vladivostok to regroup under the protection of an ally named Vorobiev. The militia, piecing together the fragments of Efremova's death, knows the stakes. This isn't just a murder. It's a declaration of war. And in a city where the line between law and crime is razor thin, the detectives brace for what's next. The next chapter will take us to the shores of Vladivostok, where a fisherman's net will pull a body from the river, a body that ties Trifonov's crew to a new murder and sends Ovchinnikov on a path of vengeance that will leave more blood in its wake. In the 1990s, Sverdlovsk is a city where the rules have been rewritten and the price of power is paid in lives. How many more will fall before the war ends? Chapter 2, The Body in the River Hook. A month after Efremova's death, a fisherman's net snagged a corpse in a Vladivostok river, its legs tied to a weight, its face unrecognizable. The body was a message, a declaration of war that stretched from Sverdlovsk to the Far East. But whose war, and at what cost? The morning mist clings to the riverbanks near Artem, a small town just outside Vladivostok, as a fisherman casts his net into the murky waters on a chilly September day in 1991. His hands, calloused from decades of labor, pull the net with a steady rhythm, the cold biting at his knuckles. But today, the net catches on something heavy, something that doesn't give like a fish or a log. He tugs harder, his brow furrowing, until the surface breaks with a grotesque sight. A bloated, disfigured body, legs tied to a concrete block, the face ravaged by water and time. The fisherman stumbles back, his breath catching in his throat, his net slipping from his hands as he realizes this is no accident. The corpse, a man in his late 20s, was strangled, his body dumped with deliberate intent, a message scrawled in the language of violence. In a city 6,000 kilometers from Sverdlovsk, the ripples of a gang war have reached the Pacific. and they're just beginning to spread. A city on the brink, Sverdlovsk, September 1991, is a city teetering on the edge of anarchy. Its streets a battleground for forces no one can fully control. The Soviet Union's collapse has left its people caught between hope and despair, its factories silent, its bread lines stretching around corners. The militia, once a symbol of order, is a shadow of its former self. Underfunded, overstretched, their holsters often empty, a bitter irony in a city where crime is surging. By 994, Russia will record 32,000 murders. But in 91, the wave is just beginning to crest, and Sverdlovsk is at its epicenter. In this lawless void, Andrei Ovchinnikov and Alexei Trifonov have carved out their empires, their gangs a new breed of predator, in a city where the old rules have been erased. Efremova's death on Bardina Street a month ago was the spark, a stray bullet meant for Ovchinnikov that killed an innocent seamstress. Now the feud between the two gang lords is escalating, and the streets of Sverdlovsk are a powder keg waiting for the next match. Ovchinnikov, 25, with his boxer's build and political connections, rules the northern districts, his gang a machine of extortion and violence, its loyalty enforced through fear. Trifonov, a former boxing champion turned gangster, holds the South, his charisma and fists commanding a crew as ruthless as he is. The two men, once partners shaking down market traders in the late 1980s, are now locked in a deadly struggle, their territories marked by invisible lines that bleed when crossed. Efremova's death wasn't their first clash, but it was the first to spill into the public eye, a declaration of war that neither can ignore. Ovchinnikov survived the ambush, but his pride didn't. And in the world of 1990s gangsters, pride is worth more than gold. Trifonov, meanwhile, has vanished, his crew fleeing to Vladivostok to regroup under the protection of an ally named Vorobyev. But the war they've ignited is far from contained. It's spreading, and the body in the river is proof. The murder in Vladivostok. The corpse in the river near Artem is identified days later, but not without heartbreak. Maxim Dasov, a 28-year-old businessman from Tashkent, had traveled to Vladivostok to buy a cheap Japanese car, a deal too good to pass up in the cash-strapped 1990s. He'd called his mother every day for the first week, his voice full of excitement, promising to return home soon. But then the calls stopped, each unanswered day stretching her worry into dread. When Tashkent militia contacted their Vladivostok counterparts, the body in the river, previously an unidentified John Doe, was flagged as a possible match. Dasov's mother flew across the country, her hands trembling as she stood in a sterile morgue, staring at the unrecognizable remains. The concrete block, the strangulation marks, the weeks in the water. They'd taken her son's face, but not his identity. She recognized the tattoo on his arm, a small star from his teenage years, and collapsed in tears. Maxim Dasov, a man chasing a better life, had become a casualty in a war he never knew existed. The Vladivostok militia digs deeper, their investigation fueled by a mother's grief and a growing unease. Dasov's last known contact was a man named Vorobyev, a name that sends a chill through the local precinct. Vorobyev is no stranger to Vladivostok's underworld, a small-time crook turned enforcer, his reputation built on loyalty to a crew from Sverdlovsk. The connection is no coincidence. Just weeks after Efremova's death, part of Trifonov's gang had fled to Vladivostok, seeking refuge with Vorobyev, a known ally. The militia in Sverdlovsk had already flagged Trifonov as a suspect in Efremova's murder, his perfect alibi at the bathhouse raising more questions than answers. Now, Dasov's death bears the same hallmarks as a previous killing tied to Trifonov's crew. Zapivalov, an Ovchinnikov henchman, had been tortured, strangled, and dumped in a river months earlier, his legs tied to a weight. The pattern is chilling. Trifonov's crew doesn't just kill, they send messages, and Dasov was the latest. a message across the miles. Back in Sverdlovsk, the militia connects the dots with a sinking feeling. Detective Ivanov, a grizzled veteran who's seen the city's underworld grow darker with each passing year, sits at his desk, a grainy fax of Dasov's autopsy report in hand. The strangulation, the concrete block, the river. It's a signature, one that matches Zapivolov's murder, a crime the militia knows but can't prove was ordered by Trifonov. "He's taunting us," Ivanov mutters, his voice heavy with frustration. The murder of Dasov, 6,000 kilometers away, is a declaration of war, a sign that Trifonov's crew isn't just hiding, they're expanding their reach, striking at anyone who crosses their path. But why Dasov? The young businessman had no ties to Sverdlovsk's underworld, no reason to be a target. The militia suspects he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, a victim of circumstance caught in Trifonov's web. Perhaps he'd crossed Vorobiev, or maybe his car deal had gone sour. Either way, his death was a message to Ovchinnikov. Trifonov's crew could strike anywhere, anytime. Ovchinnikov, meanwhile, is a storm of rage in the northern districts. The ambush on Bardina Street had wounded his pride, but Dasov's murder, though not directly tied to him, fuels his paranoia. Trifonov's crew is on the move, and Ovchinnikov knows he can't afford to look weak. In the 1990s underworld, weakness is a death sentence, and Ovchinnikov's empire is built on the illusion of invincibility. He gathers his lieutenants in a smoky back room near the city's industrial zone, a map of Sverdlovsk spread across a table littered with vodka bottles and cigarette stubs. "Trifonov thinks he can run," Ovchinnikov growls, his voice low, his fists clenched. "He'll learn. There's nowhere to hide." His plan is simple: retaliation, swift and brutal. Trifonov's top lieutenant, Kurpatov, is his target, a man whose loyalty to Trifonov makes him a prime candidate for a message of Ovchinnikov's own. The militia hears whispers of the plan through informants, their network of eyes and ears buzzing with the tension of a city on the brink. The militia's growing awareness. At the militia station, Ivanov and his team are piecing together a war they can barely contain. The fax from Vladivostok isn't the only lead tying Trifonov to the escalating violence. Operational sources, informants risking their lives for scraps of cash, confirm that Trifonov's crew fled to Vladivostok after Efremova's death, their retreat a sign of both fear and strategy. They're running from Ovchinnikov's wrath, but also from the militia, whose investigation into Efremova's murder is gaining traction. The 17 bullet casings from Bardina Street, embedded in the walls of houses 12 and 14, are a grim puzzle, their trajectories pointing to a hit meant for Ovchinnikov. But the militia knows Trifonov's alibi doesn't clear him. It only deepens the mystery. Was this a direct order or a rogue move by his crew? A preemptive strike to weaken Ovchinnikov before he could retaliate? The militia's resources are stretched thin, their methods outdated in a city where crime has outpaced justice. There's no ballistics lab, no centralized database to track the growing body count, just a handful of detectives working with notebooks and instinct. Ivanov, a veteran who's seen Sverdlovsk's underworld grow darker with each passing year, knows the stakes. This isn't just a gang war, it's a contagion, spreading from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific. Dasov's murder in Vladivostok is a warning, a sign that Trifonov's crew is playing a long game, one that could engulf more innocents. The militia can't stop the war, not yet, but they can start hunting the men fueling it. Ivanov sends a message to Vladivostok: find Vorobiev, the man last seen with Dasov, and bring him in. But Vorobiev has vanished, his trail as cold as the river that claimed Dasov's life. A city holding its breath. In Sverdlovsk, the streets hum with tension, a city holding its breath as the gangs prepare for the next strike. Markets that once buzzed with life are quieter now. Traders whispering of razborka, gang showdowns, a term that's becoming all too common. The elderly lock their doors, their memories of medveshatniki, safecrackers, and pickpockets replaced by a new breed of criminal, pandiki, bandits who kill without hesitation. Ovchinnikov's lieutenants move through the northern districts, their eyes scanning for Trifonov's men, their hands never far from their guns. Trifonov's crew, scattered but not broken, lies low in Vladivostok, their alliance with Vorobiev a temporary shield. But the war they've ignited is far from over. It's growing, and the next chapter will reveal just how far Ovchinnikov will go to even the score. Kurpatov, Trifonov's right-hand man, is a marked man, his days numbered as Ovchinnikov's plan takes shape. In a city where rivers have become graves, the militia braces for another body, another message in a war without rules. The 1990s have rewritten Sverdlovsk's laws, and the price of power is paid in blood. How many more will fall before the city breaks or fights back? Chapter 3. Rivers of Revenge. In the shadows of Sverdlovsk's crumbling streets, two henchmen met their ends in a chilling mirror of vengeance, tortured, strangled, and dumped in rivers. As the city drowned in a wave of terror, the militia realized they weren't just fighting a gang war. They were racing against a bloodbath that could consume them all. The Iset River cuts through Sverdlovsk like a cold vein, its waters sluggish and dark under a gray October sky in 1991. On its muddy banks, a group of teenagers stumbles upon a grim discovery, a man's body, bloated and pale, his legs tied to a concrete block, his neck bruised with the marks of strangulation. The boys scatter, their shouts echoing through the empty industrial district. But one stays behind, his eyes fixed on the corpse, a name forming on his lips, Kurpatov. Word spreads like wildfire through Sverdlovsk's underworld. Kurpatov, Alexei Trifonov's right-hand man, is dead. His murder a brutal echo of another killing just months earlier. Zapivalov, a loyal henchman of Andrei Ovchinnikov, had met the same fate, tortured and dumped in a river. His body a message in a war without rules. The Iset River has become a graveyard, its currents carrying the weight of a gang war that's spiraling out of control. In a city where vengeance is currency, the militia knows this is only the beginning, and the next body might not be a gangster. A war that knows no mercy. Sverdlovsk, October 1991, is a city under siege. Its streets a chessboard for a deadly game between Ovchinnikov and Trifonov. The Soviet Union's collapse has left its people adrift, their lives marked by empty shelves and emptier promises. The militia, a relic of a broken system, is outmatched, underfunded, understaffed, their holsters often empty, while the gangs wield Kalashnikovs, Makarovs, and grenades. By 94, Russia will record 32,000 murders, but in 1991, Sverdlovsk is already a preview of that carnage, its body count rising with each passing day. Efremova's death on Bardina Street was the spark, a stray bullet meant for Ovchinnikov that killed an innocent seamstress. Maxim Dasov's murder in Vladivostok, his body pulled from a river with a concrete block tied to his legs, was the escalation, a sign that Trifonov's crew was striking from afar. Now, the murders of Zapivalov and Kurpatov mark a new phase, a cycle of revenge that threatens to engulf the city in blood. Zapivalov's death came first, months before Kurpatov's, a brutal message from Trifonov's crew. A loyal henchman of Ovchinnikov, Zapivalov was snatched from a northern district alley, his screams muffled as Trifonov's men tortured him for information on Ovchinnikov's whereabouts. They wanted the gang lord's safe houses, his plans, his weaknesses, but Zapivalov didn't break. They strangled him, tied a weight to his legs, and dumped him in a river outside Sverdlovsk, his body meant to vanish into the murky depths. The militia knew of the killing through operational sources, informants who whispered of Trifonov's involvement, but no one reported Zapivalov missing, and without a body, the case remained a rumor, a ghost in their files. That is, until Kurpatov's death brought the pattern into sharp relief. A mirror of vengeance. Kurpatov's murder is a chilling mirror of Zapivalov's, a retaliation so precise it could only be Ovchinnikov's doing. Trifonov's right-hand man had been a target since the Bardina Street ambush, his loyalty to Trifonov making him a prime candidate for Ovchinnikov's wrath. The militia learns the details through a network of informants, their voices trembling as they recount the night Kurpatov disappeared. He'd been at a wedding with Trifonov's crew, a rare moment of celebration in a world of violence, when Ovchinnikov's men struck. They dragged Kurpatov from the festivities, his shouts drowned out by the music, and took him to a warehouse on the city's outskirts. There they tortured him, their questions relentless. Where was Trifonov? What were his plans? Who was Vorobiev working with in Vladivostok? Kurpatov, loyal to the end, gave them nothing. They strangled him, tied a concrete block to his legs, and dumped him in the Iset River, his body a message to Trifonov. Ovchinnikov was coming for him, no matter the cost. The militia pulls Kurpatov's body from the river, their faces grim as they note the similarities to Zapivalov's rumored death. Strangulation, a weight, a river. Detective Ivanov, who spent years chasing shadows in Sverdlovsk's underworld, feels a chill as he reads the autopsy report. "It's a mirror," he mutters, his voice heavy with the weight of realization. The two murders, one for each gang, are a cycle of vengeance, a tit-for-tat that promises more blood. Ovchinnikov and Trifonov aren't just fighting for territory, they're fighting for dominance, each death a move in a deadly chess game. But the militia knows the stakes are higher now. The gangs aren't just killing each other. Innocents like Efremova and Dasov are caught in the crossfire, and the rivers of Sverdlovsk are becoming graves for more than just gangsters. A wave of terror. As the body count rises, a new wave of terror sweeps through Sverdlovsk, one that strikes at the city's most vulnerable. The gangs, emboldened by their unchecked power, have turned to robbery, their methods as brazen as they are cruel. Elderly residents, already battered by the economic collapse, become prime targets, their homes invaded by men wielding guns and wearing stolen militia uniforms. In one chilling case, an elderly couple in Sverdlovsk is beaten, tied up, and locked in their bathroom while bandits ransack their apartment, taking everything from a leather jacket worth 750 rubles to a jar of shoe polish worth $3. The couple, bruised and trembling, survives, but their story is one of many. Operational sources confirm what the militia fears. These robberies are the work of Ovchinnikov and Trifonov's crews, their operations a twisted blend of strategy and sadism. The stolen uniforms, a mystery the militia can't unravel, are a cruel mockery of the law, a law that can't protect its own citizens. The robberies are more than just theft, they're a show of power, a message to Sverdlovsk that the gangs are untouchable. Markets, once bustling with life, are now quiet, traders whispering of rasborka, gang showdowns, a term that's become a grim part of the city's vocabulary. The elderly lock their doors, their memories of safe crackers and pickpockets replaced by a new breed of criminal. Pandiki, bandits who kill without hesitation. The wave of terror grips the city, each robbery a reminder of the gang's reach, each stolen uniform a slap in the face to a militia that's struggling to keep up. Ivanov and his team know they're not just fighting a gang war, they're fighting a contagion, one that's spreading faster than they can contain. The militia closes in. At the militia station, Ivanov and his team are racing against time, their investigation fueled by a growing sense of urgency. The murders of Zapivalov and Kuropatov, though brutal, give them a lead, a pattern that ties the gangs to a string of crimes stretching from Sverdlovsk to Vladivostok. Dasov's murder in the Far East, confirmed to be the work of Trifonov's crew, has already linked Vorobyev to the violence. But the man has vanished. His trail is cold as the river that claimed Dasov's life. In Sverdlovsk, the robberies using stolen uniforms are another piece of the puzzle, a sign that the gangs are growing bolder, their operations more sophisticated. The militia knows they can't stop the war. Not yet, but they can start hunting the men fueling it. Operational sources, informants risking their lives for scraps of cash, provide the first real breakthrough. Trifonov's crew, scattered after Efremova's death, is regrouping in Vladivostok, their alliance with Vorobyev a temporary shield. But Ovchinnikov is on the move, his retaliation for the Bardina Street ambush now a full-scale offensive. Kurpatov's death was just the beginning, a message to Trifonov that Ovchinnikov can strike at his inner circle. The militia hears whispers of Ovchinnikov's next move, a plan to target more of Trifonov's men, to dismantle his empire piece by piece. But the gang's reach extends beyond their own ranks. The robberies, the murders of innocents, the stolen uniforms. They're a cancer spreading through Sverdlovsk, and the militia knows they can't wait for the next body to act. A city on the edge. Sverdlovsk is a city on the edge, its streets humming with fear and anticipation. The ice-set river, once a lifeline for the city's industry, has become a graveyard, its waters carrying the weight of a war that shows no signs of slowing. The elderly barricade themselves in their homes, their savings hidden in jars and mattresses, their trust in the militia shattered by the sight of bandits in stolen uniforms. Traders at the markets whisper of next gang shakedowns, knowing that paying one side doesn't protect them from the other. Ovchinnikov's crew moves through the northern districts, their guns hidden but their intent clear, while Trifonov's men, scattered but not broken, plot their next move from Vladivostok. The militia caught in the middle braces for what's next, a war that's no longer confined to the shadows, a war that's spilling into the light. The next chapter will take us deeper into the gang's reign of terror, as Ovchinnikov and Trifonov's men unleash a wave of violence that threatens to break Sverdlovsk apart. The militia, backed by the KGB, will make their move, their hunt for the gang lords reaching a breaking point. But in a city where rivers run red, the line between justice and vengeance is razor thin, and the cost of failure is paid in blood. How much more can Sverdlovsk endure before it falls? Chapter 4. The Fall of the Kings. In the heart of Sverdlovsk's underworld, the militia struck with a precision the gangs never saw coming. Two crime lords, once untouchable, now cuffed and cornered. But as the arsenals of Ovchinnikov and Trifonov were laid bare, the city trembled. How many more lives would their empires claim before justice could prevail? The dim glow of a street lamp flickers outside a nondescript apartment in Sverdlovsk's northern district, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement on a frigid November night in '91. Inside, Andrei Ovchinnikov sits at a table littered with vodka bottles and cigarette stubs. His lieutenants gathered around, their faces hard with resolve. The air is thick with tension, the weight of Kurpatov's murder, a retaliation for Zapivalov's death still fresh in their minds. Ovchinnikov's voice is low, a growl that cuts through the haze of smoke. Trifonov thinks he can hide in Vladivostok. I'll drag him back myself. But before he can finish, the door explodes inward, splintering under the force of a militia battering ram. Officers in plain clothes, their pistols drawn, flood the room, shouting orders. "Hands up now!" Ovchinnikov freezes, his fist clenching, but he doesn't resist. The king of the north, once untouchable, is cuffed and dragged into the night, his empire crumbling in a matter of seconds. Across the country, in Vladivostok, Alexei Trifonov will soon face the same fate, a coordinated strike that marks the beginning of the end for Sverdlovsk's criminal overlords. A city at its breaking point. Sverdlovsk, November 1991, is a city on the brink of collapse, its streets scarred by a gang war that has spiraled beyond control. The Soviet Union's dissolution has left its people adrift, their lives defined by scarcity, empty shelves, endless bread lines, and a militia that's a shadow of its former self. By 1990, Russia will record 32,000 murders, but in 1991, Sverdlovsk is a grim preview, its body count rising with each passing day. Efremova's death on Bardina Street was the spark, a stray bullet meant for Ovchinnikov that killed an innocent seamstress. Maxim Dasov's murder in Vladivostok escalated the conflict, his body pulled from a river with a concrete block tied to his legs, a message from Trifonov's crew. The murders of Zapivalov and Kurapatov, henchmen tortured and dumped in rivers, marked a cycle of vengeance that turned the Iset River into a graveyard. And the wave of robberies, elderly residents beaten, their homes ransacked by bandits in stolen militia uniforms, has left the city gripped by terror, a fear that seeps into every locked door and whispered rumor. Ovchinnikov and Trifonov, once partners shaking down market traders in the late 1980s, have become the rival kings of Sverdlovsk's underworld. Ovchinnikov, 25, with his boxer's build and political connections, rules the northern districts, his gang a machine of extortion and violence. Trifonov, a former boxing champion turned gangster, holds the south, his charisma and fists commanding a crew as ruthless as he is. Their feud, fueled by ambition and betrayal, has turned the city into a battlefield, their gangs armed with an arsenal that mocks the militia's empty holsters, Makarovs, Kalashnikovs, grenades, even Degtyarev machine guns. But the militia, backed by the KGB, has been closing in, their investigation fueled by a growing body count in a city on the edge of breaking. The arrests of Ovchinnikov and Trifonov are the culmination of months of work, a desperate bid to stop a war that's already claimed too many lives. The arrest of Ovchinnikov. The raid on Ovchinnikov's safe house is a masterstroke of precision, a rare moment of triumph for a militia that's been outgunned and outmaneuvered at every turn. Detective Vladivostok, who spent years chasing shadows in Sverdlovsk's underworld, leads the operation. His team, a mix of plainclothes officers and KGB agents, their pistols drawn, their movement swift. The intelligence came from an informant, a low-level thug who turned on Ovchinnikov for a handful of rubles and a promise of protection. "He's there tonight," the informant had whispered, his voice trembling, planning something big. Ivanov didn't hesitate. The militia had been tracking Ovchinnikov for weeks, their surveillance a patchwork of stakeouts and whispered tips. But this was their chance to strike. Ovchinnikov doesn't resist, a fact that surprises Ivanov as much as it unnerves him. The gang lord, known for his ferocity, sits calmly as the cuffs snap around his wrists, his eyes cold, his jaw set. "You think this changes anything?" he mutters, his voice a low growl as he's led to a waiting van. Ivanov doesn't answer, but he knows the truth. This arrest is a turning point, but the war is far from over. Along with Ovchinnikov, his lieutenants are rounded up: Kostyrev, Kupratsevich, Ponomarev, and Makov, the gang's enforcer, a man known as the executioner for his brutal efficiency. The raid yields a haul that stuns even the most seasoned officers: a Kalashnikov automatic rifle, 5 sawed-off shotguns, a hunting rifle, grenades, knives, and garrots. An arsenal that could arm a small army. Trifonov's return and capture. While Ovchinnikov is cuffed in Sverdlovsk, Alexei Trifonov's world is collapsing in Vladivostok. After Dasov's murder, Trifonov's crew had sought refuge with Vorobyev, their ally in the Far East, hoping to regroup and strike back. But the militia, backed by the KGB, has been tracking them, their network of informants stretching across the country. A tip comes through, a phone call to the Sverdlovsk KGB. The voice anonymous but urgent. Trifonov's coming back. He heard Ovchinnikov's down. The information aligns with operational sources, and Ivanov knows they can't wait. Trifonov, a former boxing champion whose charisma masks a ruthless core, is a prize too valuable to lose. The militia and KGB coordinate a second strike, this time in Sverdlovsk, where Trifonov has returned, believing the city is his for the taking now that Ovchinnikov is in custody. But the authorities are ready. On a quiet street in the southern district, Trifonov's convoy, a battered Volga and a Zhiguli, is ambushed by special units, their movements swift and precise. Trifonov, unlike Ovchinnikov, doesn't go quietly. He lunges at an officer, his fists swinging, a boxer's instinct kicking in. But the numbers are against him. He's tackled to the ground, his face pressed into the pavement, his curses echoing as the cuffs snap shut. His crew, Kosterov, Kupratsevich, and others, is rounded up, their resistance fierce but futile. The raid yields another arsenal, a sawed-off Degtyarev machine gun, a Makarov pistol, a Nagant revolver, a hunting rifle, grenades, garrots, and knives, a stockpile that confirms the gang's firepower, a chilling reminder of the threat they posed. The arsenals of terror. The combined arsenals of Ovchinnikov and Trifonov's gangs, now laid bare, send a shockwave through Sverdlovsk. The militia station, a crumbling Soviet-era building with peeling paint and flickering lights, becomes a temporary armory as the weapons are cataloged. Ivanov stands among the hall, his face grim, the weight of the past months etched into his features. Kalashnikovs, Makarovs, Degtyarevs, Nagants, names that evoke military might, not street crime. Grenades, garrots, sawed-off shotguns, the tools of a war that's been fought in the shadows, its casualties mounting with each passing day. The weapons are more than just evidence. They're a testament to the gang's power, a power that has held Sverdlovsk in a chokehold for months. The investigation uncovers more than just weapons. Conspiratorial apartments, safe houses used by both gangs, are raided, their contents a grim catalog of the city's suffering. Stolen goods from robberies across Sverdlovsk, Minsk, and even Dushanbe are recovered. Leather jackets, nightgowns, dishware, even a jar of shoe polish worth 3 rubles, taken from an elderly couple beaten and locked in their bathroom. The stolen militia uniforms, used to terrorize victims, are found in one of Ovchinnikov's hideouts, their origin a mystery the militia can't unravel. How did gangsters get their hands on official uniforms? The uniforms were often worn by Kosterev or Kupratsevich, whose faces are now recognized by dozens of victims. Their testimonies a litany of fear and loss. Each item, each weapon, is a piece of the puzzle, a link in a chain of violence that stretches from Bardina Street to the rivers of Vladivostok. Breakthroughs and barriers. With Ovchinnikov and Trifonov in custody, the militia's investigation gains momentum. But the road to justice is fraught with obstacles. The gang's operations, once shrouded in secrecy, are now exposed, their conspiratorial apartments yielding a wealth of evidence. Ivanov and his team work tirelessly, their desks piled high with reports, their nights sleepless as they interrogate the captured gangsters. Ovchinnikov, cold and calculating, reveals little, his answers clipped, his eyes burning with defiance. Trifonov, by contrast, is volatile, his boxer's temper flaring as he rails against the charges, his fists clenching as if he could fight his way out of the cell. But their lieutenants, facing the weight of the evidence, begin to crack. Kostyrev, Kuprasevich, Ponomarev, and Makov, the executioner, give statements, their confessions a damning portrait of the gang's inner workings. Ovchinnikov ran his crew like a dictator, personally selecting targets for each robbery, leading operations on the ground, and dividing the spoils with a meticulous hand. Trifonov's gang operated with similar precision, their attacks coordinated, their violence calculated. The murder of Efremova, the militia learns, was indeed tied to Trifonov's crew. The stray bullet that killed her came from a Kalashnikov light machine gun, later found in their arsenal. Dasov's murder in Vladivostok is confirmed as their work, with Vorobyev and 3 others implicated through confessions, though Vorobyev himself remains at large. The robberies, the murders, the stolen uniforms, all of it paints a picture of a city under siege, its people caught in a war they never chose to fight. A city in limbo, Sverdlovsk, breathes a cautious sigh of relief as news of the arrest spreads. But the fear lingers, a shadow that refuses to lift. The Iset River, once a lifeline for the city's industry, remains a graveyard, its waters carrying the ghosts of Zapovalov, Kurpatov, and countless others. The elderly, battered by months of terror, keep their doors locked, their trust in the militia shattered by the sight of bandits in stolen uniforms. Markets, once bustling, are quiet, traders whispering of naezd, gang shakedowns, knowing that the gang's lieutenants, though captured, have left a legacy of fear that won't fade easily. The militia, backed by the KGB, has struck a blow, but the war isn't over. Not yet. The next chapter will take us to the trial, where Ovchinnikov and Trifonov face justice. Their gang's crimes laid bare for a city to witness. But even in custody, their influence lingers, their desperation erupting in a failed escape attempt that takes hostages and threatens to reignite the violence. In a city where rivers run red, the line between justice and chaos is razor thin, and the cost of failure is paid in blood. Can Sverdlovsk heal, or will the ghosts of its criminal kings haunt its streets forever? Chapter 5. The Verdict's Echo. In a packed Sverdlovsk courtroom, 2 crime lords face the weight of their sins, murders, robberies, and a city held hostage by fear. But even behind bars, Ovchinnikov and Trifonov weren't done fighting, their desperation erupting in a hostage crisis that threatened to reignite the war. Could justice finally heal a city, or would its scars endure? The Sverdlovsk regional courtroom is a cavern of faded Soviet grandeur, its walls peeling with the weight of decades, its air thick with the scent of dust and anticipation on a stark winter morning in 1992. The benches are packed, a sea of faces etched with grief, anger, and a flicker of hope. Families of the victims, journalists scribbling furiously, and ordinary citizens who've lived under the shadow of terror for too long. At the front, Andrei Ovchinnikov and Alexei Trifonov stand in the dock, their towering frames cuffed, their eyes burning with defiance. The evidence table is a grim altar. Ovchinnikov's Kalashnikov, Trifonov's Degtyarev machine gun, a pile of stolen militia uniforms, and a list of the dead. Efremova, Dasov, Zapivalov, Kurpatov, and countless unnamed victims of their gang's reign. The trial, overseen by the General Prosecutor's Office of the RSFSR, is the culmination of a year of bloodshed, a chance for Sverdlovsk to reclaim its soul. But as the judge's gavel rises, a question hangs heavy in the air. Can justice silence the echoes of a war that nearly broke a city, or will its ghosts linger in the shadows? A city seeking justice. Sverdlovsk, 1992, is a city scarred by the violence of the past year, its streets a testament to the cost of unchecked power. The Soviet Union's collapse has left its people adrift, their lives defined by scarcity, empty shelves, endless breadlines, and a militia that struggled to keep pace with a crime wave that will peak at 32,000 murders nationwide by 1994. In 1991, Sverdlovsk became a battleground for Ovchinnikov and Trifonov, 2 former allies turned bitter enemies, their gangs carving up the city in a brutal war for dominance. Efremova's death on Bardina Street was the spark, a stray bullet meant for Ovchinnikov that killed an innocent seamstress. Dasov's murder in Vladivostok escalated the conflict, his body dumped in a river as a message from Trifonov's crew. The murders of Zapivolov and Kurpatov, henchmen tortured and drowned, marked a cycle of vengeance that turned the Iset River into a graveyard. And the wave of robberies, elderly residents beaten, their homes ransacked by bandits in stolen militia uniforms, left the city gripped by terror, a fear that lingered even after the arrests. Ovchinnikov and Trifonov, once untouchable kings of Sverdlovsk's underworld, now faced the consequences of their reign. Ovchinnikov, 25, with his boxer's build and political connections, ran his northern gang like a dictator, orchestrating robberies and murders with ruthless precision. Trifonov, a former boxing champion turned gangster, held the south, his charisma masking a core of violence that matched Ovchinnikov's. Their arrests in November 1991, a coordinated strike by the militia and KGB, marked a turning point. Their arsenals, Kalashnikovs, Makarovs, Dektyarovs, Nagants, grenades, and Garatis, laid bare as a testament to their power. The raids on their safe houses uncovered stolen goods, stolen uniforms, and a litany of crimes that stretched from Sverdlovsk to Vladivostok. Now in the courtroom, their empires are on trial, and Sverdlovsk watches, waiting for justice to speak. The trial of the century. The trial, spanning weeks, is a grim theater of truth, each day peeling back another layer of the gang's terror. The prosecution, led by the General Prosecutor's Office, presents a mountain of evidence: the weapons, the stolen uniforms, the stolen goods, and the testimonies of victims and captured gang members. Efremova's sister takes the stand, her voice trembling as she recounts the night her sister died, a stray bullet from Trifonov's Kalashnikov cutting her life short on Bardina Street. Dasov's mother, her face etched with grief, speaks of her son's dreams, his body pulled from a Vladivostok river, a victim of Trifonov's crew. The elderly couple, beaten and locked in their bathroom, describe the terror of seeing bandits in militia uniforms, their voices breaking as they recall the loss of everything they owned, down to a jar of shoe polish worth 3 rubles. The gang members, facing the weight of the evidence, turn on their leaders. Kostyrev, Kupratsevich, Ponomarev, and Machov, the executioner, give damning statements, their confessions a portrait of a world ruled by fear. Ovchinnikov selected targets, led robberies, and divided the spoils with a dictator's precision, they say. Trifonov's crew operated with the same ruthlessness. Their murders, Efremova, Dasov, Zapivolov, a calculated message to their rivals. Vorobyev, though still at large, is implicated in Dasov's murder. His role: a desperate escape. Even behind bars, Ovchinnikov and Trifonov's influence lingers, their desperation erupting in a final act of defiance. In the pre-trial detention center, a strange alliance forms. Members of the once rival gangs, now united by a shared fear of justice, hatch a plan to escape. A guard, corrupted by a bribe, slips them a pistol, a small act of betrayal that nearly reignites the war. The plan unfolds in the detention center's visitation room, where 4 gang members, 2 from Ovchinnikov's crew, 2 from Trifonov's, seize the moment. They shoot a guard, wounding him, and barricade themselves inside, taking hostages, a lawyer, a family member, and a prison staffer, their screams echoing through the concrete halls. The gangsters' demands are as pathetic as they are naive. 1 million rubles, a car, and vodka, a desperate bid for freedom that reflects their diminished power. The militia surrounds the building, their pistols drawn, the standoff stretching into hours of tense negotiation. The gangsters, fueled by adrenaline and fear, drink the vodka delivered as a concession, unaware that it's laced with sedatives. Within an hour, they're unconscious, sprawled across the floor, the hostages freed, their nightmare over. 2 of the gangsters are dragged back to their cells, waking to the reality of their failure. One escapes in the chaos, a ghost who will be hunted for months, while another never wakes, his body a final casualty of their reckless bid. The escape attempt, though thwarted, sends a chill through Sverdlovsk. A reminder that even in custody, Ovchinnikov and Trifonov's reach is long, their desperation a spark that could reignite the violence. The verdict and its weight. The trial resumes, the escape attempt a grim footnote in a case already steeped in blood. The judge, a stern figure whose face betrays the weight of the proceedings, delivers the verdict. Ovchinnikov and Trifonov are guilty on all counts: murder, robbery, extortion, and organized crime. The sentence is severe: life imprisonment, a rare punishment in a Russia transitioning to new legal norms, but one that reflects the scale of their crimes. The courtroom erupts in a mix of gasps and sobs, families clutching photos of their loved ones. Efremova, Dasov, Zapovalov, Kurpatov, tears of relief mingling with the pain of loss. Ovchinnikov's face remains a mask, his eyes cold, while Trifonov's fists clench, his boxer's temper flaring one last time as he's led away. The verdict marks a legal end, but not an emotional one. Sverdlovsk, battered by a year of terror, begins the slow process of healing. Its streets quieter now, but the scars run deep. The Aset River, once a graveyard for the gang's victims, flows on, its waters carrying the ghosts of a war that claimed too many lives. The elderly, once terrorized by bandits in stolen uniforms, keep their doors locked, their trust in the militia fractured. Markets stir back to life, but the whispers of Razborka linger, a reminder of a time when Pandiki ruled the city. The militia, bolstered by the arrests, trains new recruits, their methods modernizing, but resources remain scarce, and the wounds of 1991 are raw, the legacy of a broken era. Ovchinnikov and Trifonov's trial forces Sverdlovsk to confront its demons, a system that birthed predators, a city that paid the price, and a decade that redefined power. Their gangs, though dismantled, leave a legacy that will shape the 1990s. Cooperatives become commercial enterprises, bandits trade leather jackets for crimson blazers, Kalashnikovs for Uzis, Zhigulis for BMWs. By 1995, the city will be carved up again, new players rising from the ashes of Ovchinnikov and Trifonov's empires. The two gang lords, locked away for life, will never return to the city they once ruled, their names fading into legend, a cautionary tale of ambition and betrayal. Sverdlovsk rebuilds, its markets buzzing once more, but the empty homes, Efremova's apartment, Dasov's mother's house, stand as scars. The militia, haunted by the rivers that ran red, carries the weight of those they couldn't save, their dreams stained by the faces of the dead. The 1990s rewrote the city's laws, and the price of power was paid in blood. Can Sverdlovsk truly heal, or will the ghosts of its criminal kings haunt its streets forever? The verdict has spoken, but the echo of that war, its violence, its terror, will linger for generations, a reminder of an era when the fastest trigger ruled and a city paid the price. Don't scroll past. Hit like and subscribe if you're ready for the next twisted story.